Hi everyone, welcome to episode 69 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. Thank you again for tuning in and listening on YouTube and iTunes and all the other methods that people listen to. I want to shout out first of all and thank Eileen S. and Aylet F. for listening and reaching out. It was a pleasure speaking to both of you, and thank you for following along. As a reminder, San Francisco's AILA San Francisco conference is happening June 13th, I think it is, about 2 weeks away. So that should be a fun time. I'm going to be there speaking at a couple of events there. Please stop by to see me if you're there, and reach out if you walk by me or something. If you're a listener, would love to meet and greet and do all that kind of stuff. Today's episode is going to be a little longer because there's a lot of little things I wanted to talk about in regards to practice management, touching upon ICE and the typical Trump era stuff, but also what's going on with some asylum cases, what's going on with consular processing, L1 issues, and marketing and lawyer finances. It's a big issue because there's a lot of new studies that came out of how much money lawyers are making and all that. And it's a big issue because I've seen so many attorneys now, based on these records that are coming out, the statistics, where immigration lawyers are making the least amount of money than all of the attorneys. And I really have to talk about that because it's a shame with the kind of work that we do, which is of all the fields of law, the closest to the medical field, like a doctor. You're really saving people's lives in the U.S. and to be paid peanuts, it seems, in the legal field is a travesty. So I want to talk about that a little bit. But without further ado, let's get it started. Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqqlaw.com. So to start off the show, I want to talk about a topic and problem that's been talking about a lot recently, which is the waiver situation with the travel ban. A Washington Post article came out that said of the thousands and thousands of petitions and applications being reviewed through consulates in the last couple of months from the nationals of those nations that were barred, only 655 visas were granted. Now, the Department of State didn't say exactly how many visa applications have been sent out, but the numbers are low. And obviously, there's a lot of dissatisfaction with this, not only from immigration rights groups and all that, but just looking at the people that are involved. I got a call today of a guy, and people that don't have attorneys and do it themselves have these kind of problems. He had his fiance, American guy, had an Iranian fiance, sent his fiance to the interview in the Middle East. She was Iranian descent and just got denied, calling me and saying I thought that there was an exception for spouses and fiancés. Well, there was up to last December. That stopped. If you knew that, you wouldn't have scheduled the interview and waited to see what's going on in the Supreme Court or develop a better waiver package or something like that to help out. It seems these waiver packages, not clear if they even asked them or need them. Actually, right now they're speaking. One of my clients is going to an interview right now. I'm going to see how that goes. It's the first client I had to actually go into an interview during this time. Other ones, I just tell them to postpone. So I'll be knowing in a couple hours what's going on with that. But along with that crackdown and reinterpretation of how things happen, there's an article that said 2/3 of recent ICE arrests of undocumented people were people that did not have criminal history. So always the idea, and part of it says, well, if ICE is going to crack down, okay, get rid of these criminals, give people who are killing and murdering, whatever it is. But in fact, a majority of the people getting picked up don't have criminal history. So it's extremely scary situation. I've talked about it before, but if you're here unlawfully, imagine a guy came here from Central America, married a U.S. citizen, came here unlawfully, has U.S. citizen kids here for 20, 30 years. They're getting picked up. Literally, they're getting picked up now from central, let's call it Europe or something like that, or Eastern Europe, housewives, and they're getting picked up and deported, and it's just like grab and go. It's pretty scary. And what does that do to the family? What does that do to people who are here that are living in fear? How are they going to respect the system? How are they going to participate in society? It's just not the way to go. It's very foolish to antagonize people in such a heartless way. It's gotten so bad that there's judges that are actually calling ICE people untrustworthy, and they're calling them liars. And I mean judges. Like in court, they're judges who just can't take ICE as word because there's so much lying, there's so much accusing people that aren't in gangs as being gang members to help avoid their bond or to help prosecute them and deport them. Do what you got to do, but do it within the bounds of the system. So that was very, very unjust, and it's just scary that they're going, because there's this old saying from World War II. First they came for the trade unions, then I didn't say anything. Then they came for these people, I didn't say anything. Then they came for me. If they're cracking down and just saying screw the law, screw the Constitution, it's very dangerous. Who's next? And this ICE and the immigration system is such a slippery slope for that to get worse. Now, when it comes to practice management, one messed up situation that's happening is they've come in to crack down, especially Central American embassies, on the public charge factor and the I-864. So traditionally, when you do have to support, if you have make enough income or if you're a sponsor, make enough money, it's not an issue. One thing I've seen now, they always want pay stubs and employer letters now. Okay, I provide that with these applications. But there are a couple of attorneys that said that their clients went to the interview, for example, in Ciudad Juarez. They had the interview, and these are people that had I-601A provisional waivers. And then they were denied at the interview because they said the affidavit support wasn't good, even though they had joint sponsors that made like $100,000 or something like that. One person said they're asking for friends to be relatives, not even just random people, which doesn't make sense. The contracts with the government doesn't matter if it's a family member or not. But they deny, do the temporary denial for public charge situations. They go and come back and bring affidavit support that's proper. The people go and come back and they say, okay, your affidavit support is proper now, but the I-601A is denied because of that first refusal. You have to go now and do a regular I-601, which means you're stuck out of the country for a year. You're spending all this money all over again. You don't know if they're going to prove it or not. It's catastrophic. I can't imagine being in that situation, going to consular processing, having an I-601 waiver in hand, and then for whatever reasons to have that denied. I mean, you should keep the I-601A alive at least for them to figure out the affidavit where to fix. So that's the kind of stuff that's happening. So you got to be very careful with the I-864. I try to avoid using assets. That's very tricky, and the consulates don't want to hear about that. Finding someone that has a W-2 income and just gets paid normally, that's got to be the way to go. And it's hard doing that in a lot of cases, but anything other than that is scary. Now, 601As have increased, so they had to disperse the caseload. They added the Potomac Service Center to help with the I-618 caseload. Hopefully that helps out. But even scarier than all this, before you do the I-618 and get it approved, you have to do an I-130. And I-130s sometimes require an interview. So imagine you're going to interview for I-130, so you can do your I-601A and then go do consular processing. And at the interview, ICE is waiting there to pick you up. And there's several cases like that are happening. One case was an Army chaplain whose husband was with them. I think they were a same-sex couple, but they went and they picked up the Army chaplain's spouse. At first, when the interview said ICE is coming, they said, okay, give us a couple days and then come pick him up, because out of respect for being in the military, they said, okay. But now the spouse of a U.S. citizen who was going to do I-601A and do the right thing according to regulations is detained for deportation. Now, they already had a removal order probably, but it's a messed up situation. And again, add insult to injury, when I was talking about, first they came for the trade unions, I didn't do anything and all that, there's a report that there's over like 1,000 U.S. citizens that have been detained being accused of being unlawful because they couldn't pull their paperwork together to show that they're U.S. citizens. And that's creepy, just because you have an accent or you look different, you don't carry your naturalization certificate around. Who does that? They could do that. Now, I don't know how someone could not pull together to find it. I do know, I have clients, and I see, like, when you ask clients for their driver's license and they can't find it, even though they drove to there, they should be easy enough to pull together your proof of citizenship. You should do that, have your passport, naturalization certificate. But, the reality is we're lawyers, and we're used to having paperwork also handy and thinking about that, especially immigration lawyers. Most people just don't think about that. They're just barely trying to make it, working a 9-to-5 job at minimum wage. Their really just thought is, how am I going to pay rent today? How am I going to pay the car payment? How am I going to, feed the kid? And they're not really thinking about, okay, where's my naturalization certificate? Or if they lose it, getting a new one, which is going to cost more than they could afford, and take 8 months or 9 months to get a new one. So it's really a big burden. And this is part of the bifurcation of society between the 1% and the 99 really taking place. The lower you are on that economic scale, the more you're bombarded with difficulties that you can't, well, in essence, the treadmill keeps going faster and faster, and it's hard for you to keep up and keep running, so you keep end up falling and faltering, and the system eats you up. And through like the prison system that we have, both immigration and regular, where taxpayer money goes to fund to incarcerate people that are really just poor people who don't know better or can't do better, and it just keeps getting grinding down, and it eats up people. It's really catastrophic. There was a book, The Time Machine, I think it was, and it's a classic book from way back when, like 100 years ago. But this guy goes in the future and he sees, there's like two races, and there's like vampiric race that eats on the villagers and stuff. And that's what I'm talking about when it becomes the have and have-nots. And you see this, the oligarchs in Russia, in China you have these, Communist Party leadership and their cronies. In Iran you have the mullahs and their cronies. In all sorts of parts of the world where the bifurcation has been there, especially for a long time, the regular people are fodder for the elites to just chew up. If they're good-looking women that are born, they'll take them, and then they'll use them. If they're, they can use them as, household chores, they'll use that. But then when they're done, they discard them with no benefits and nothing like that. It's a scary system, and the idea was the U.S. Was different than that. But you see that the pressures are piling up, and the system is giving way. And that's a really sad thing, because it's really just the U.S. that does that. But moving on from that tangent, the one thing that's happening, speaking of chewing up in systems, socialist societies that have these talks about how we're going to do this, do that. Venezuela has completely decimated their economy with runaway inflation, trying to pay for everything with paper money and not having things to back it up, and really destroying the economy. Well, what happened is, essentially, if you're from Venezuela, getting an asylum approved if you're in the physical United States is like a snap. Like, that's the easiest asylum case you can do right now. I don't do asylum, but I've talked with asylum people both in and outside the government, and that's the easiest case. But what happens now, there's word that they're denying asylum cases, they're denying visas for people from Venezuela. They're going back in and canceling them and denying them, because and once they step foot in the U.S., that's an asylum case, that's a green card, eventual green card citizen. And so they cut that route off to prevent it from happening. Now, talking about the leadership just being out there, the Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, and she's been controversial and just confused, really, in interviews I've seen with her. It didn't provoke a lot of confidence in her abilities. Hopefully, behind the scenes, she's better than she portrays herself on television. But she said that it caused outcry, where she said schools can make the decision to call ICE if they feel like there's an undocumented student. And at least for K through 12, that's against the law to do something like that. And even isn't, like, do you really want kids to be afraid, come to school to learn, to be afraid of ICE? So what's happening? They're going to stay at home and not go to school, and then what's going to happen? What are they going to do then? I got to explain that. Like, how have you thought 2 steps ahead of what happens if the kids are afraid to go to school, get education, they stay home, especially from communities that are financially not well off? What happens to those students? You keep talking about MS-13 and all this kind of stuff. How do you think they're going to recruit new people? By people who are going to school and getting good grades have a future, or people who are just giving up or afraid of the bigger community, so have to huddle up and get in some niche group for personal protection? Think about these things through instead of just having blind hate. It's amazing. And along with that, the entrepreneur program, finally announcements of them cutting it out is happening. I never filed any because I just told people it's not worth it to file something like that, because obviously this is going to happen, it's going to end. One other note, I guess we're going to more practice management stuff, but so, I do a lot of cases from the Middle East. I haven't done from Baghdad until recently. And, Baghdad, there's an electronic system. So what you do is you're supposed to scan and email in attachments of the NBC file. I got one Baghdad case, but when the NBC contacted me, they said mail the stuff in. So I was like, okay, they said mail it. So I mail it in, and then get an RFE. They say the birth certificate and the police certificate are wrong. They weren't, but okay, we went and got a new one and retranslated it, and then sent it in, and they approved. Oh, they didn't approve it. Then they sent it back, and they said, you're supposed to email this to us. And I was like, well, first you told us to mail it to us. In the RFE, you told us to mail it to us. Now you want us to email it. So okay, I emailed it. It got done. We got an interview scheduled. So I went to, when you do most embassies, they have this checklist packet that recently started, which is good. It breaks down everything the embassy requires. Now I've done Kuwait. I've done UAE, Armenia, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, all that area, so I was like, okay, just typical stuff. And I didn't read the fine print, but for Baghdad, Iraq, and actually a couple other countries, I realize now, they asked for the birth certificate of the petitioner if it's like a parent-child case, which was here, and they asked for obviously the applicant's birth certificate with translation. But in Baghdad, they also asked for birth certificates of all the children of the applicant. And so I was like, something I like popped in my head about a couple weeks now before the interview, so we're getting together. But be mindful of that. I had a case in Amsterdam that was similar, but we had it was a marriage case and we want to prove the marriage, so we actually proved the birth certificates. It always just happened. But this was a U.S. citizen filing for their parent, and it never comes up because they don't need that for Turkey, you don't need that for Armenia, you don't need that for Abu Dhabi. But Baghdad requires it, so be mindful. Always when you get a new case, and just do it anyways, because the reciprocity charge change frequently. Immediately go to the the country where they're processing the visa processing is going to happen, and read that checklist beforehand to see if there's any changes. Redo your review of the visa reciprocity charts of what the requirements are for how their marriage certificates are or criminal certificates or all that kind of stuff. Because updates happen, you don't know it. You don't want to find that stuff out right before the interview, which could be a problem. Now moving on from that, regarding TN Nafta visas. So TN's like a crazy category because like Trump talks so mad stuff about it, he hates it, and it's not clear what's going to happen. But I was listening to an AILA panel from last year about the TN program, and they said that if you're doing pre-clearance TN at the Canadian border, so you go to Toronto, what preferably you could do is you take the TN package if you're going to process at the border, show it to this border officer there, spend an hour, 2 or 3, review it, and then it gets approved. You enter the U.S. and then you go back and you get your stuff together and fly out. But in the recording on the panel, they said you can't do that. When you go to the border, it has to be an attempt to just come and stay. So it kind of sucks because like if you bought a flight and you go in early and it doesn't work out, then your flight's out of luck. So it doesn't make financial sense, practical sense to not do that. I'm not too sure if that's a regulation or not, but this person in the panel said you have to do that. So if you have better knowledge of that or any confirmation of that, please email me, info@jqklaw.com. I don't like clients that have the ticket bought for the airplane and they go to pre-clearance and get it denied and have a problem. I prefer that, because I haven't gotten them denied before, but I had times where like, okay, go back and get one more document and bring it tomorrow. And so if that's the case, if the plane ticket's gone and the person lost money, have to get a new ticket, it's like a mess. So it just makes sense if they're going to go through the land border, especially if it's like a driving border, to be to just be able to go in and come back and then and settle all their stuff in Canada before coming. Also, just one thing to remember, I was reading the transcript of the LAX CBP meeting with AILA. I missed it, unfortunately, for this quarter. But LAX said, at least, imagine you're like a Mexican TN holder working in Alaska. Is that it? Okay, yes. And, you want to come to, go back to Mexico or South America, and your plane has a stop in, like, mainland, like, U.S. Before going to Mexico. You can't use a TN visa as a transit visa. You can either get the transit visa, I think it's a C visa or something, or a tourist B1, B2. Those are 2 types of visas you can use for transit purposes, but you can't use other visas whose intent is for coming to work for transit purposes. I guess maybe L1s, H1Bs would fall in that too. Now, would the officer notice that or not? I don't know, but it's kind of a crummy thing to force people that are like in that situation to go get an extra transit visa or an extra tourist visa just for the sake of stepping in. But the requirement for transit visa has been there for some time now, but because the U.S. usually isn't a transit hub because it's so far away other countries, it doesn't come up, but it's going to come up with Western Hemisphere countries. So be mindful and tell your clients that if they're in a situation where they're stopping the U.S. I had a Brazilian case where they were coming to Canada and they were stopping the U.S. and luckily they contacted me and asked, do I need a transit visa? And I said, yeah, they definitely do. They're not going to let you just come through without that, or a tourist visa, B1, B2. Now, there's another question that popped up regarding the E2 visa that I want to put out there to see your opinions of it. So, imagine this. You have a guy that just graduated with a PhD in like computer science, one of these Silicon Valley kind of guys in the U.S., doesn't have money of his own, but he has this business idea that's going to make a lot of money. And he finds all these venture capitalists that want to invest, $10 million in a company, for example. Now, he wants to stay here and do an E2 visa to operate the country, but he doesn't have the investment funds. And, the companies, those venture capital, not just give them $10 million and have them invested, so that's not going to happen because they're not going to get their shares necessarily. They want to invest in ownership in the company. So is this possible that the E2 applicant, the foreign national, starts a company, let's say corporation, and issues 100 shares in his own name. And then he takes his 100 shares and, sells 49% of them, or 49 out of the 100, to the shareholders, gets a $10 million, and then gets that $10 million and invests it into the company and does all the things he wants to do to build it up. Now, even if he sells the $10 million and gets it, he doesn't have to reinvest in the company. So the share purchasers might be out of luck, and he might steal the money, or she might steal the money. But let's say it takes that $10 million to reinvest in the company and does all the stuff that was supposed to happen. So he has, majority ownership, foreign nationals, majority of the company, has $10 million at that point, invest in the company. It should be E2. Now, you might have to source of funds to see how those companies got it. I don't know. But I talked to people, and most people were either said no or like, well, it's iffy whether they'll accept that. But because in essence, the person has the money, they're investing, they're majority shareholder, it's enough for it to not to be marginal, it's like, got a good business plan, all this kind of stuff. Would that work for an E2? That way, a person that doesn't have money but a good idea could use investment funds from third parties to fund the E2 investment. So that's an interesting thing. I'm like, if that's possible, it'd be very good for these people that are great ideas, realistic ideas, not these cockamamie ideas that come, but all these venture capital kind of ideas, and it could happen. Now, I went on vacation, or not semi-vacation. There was an AIL conference in Vegas about a month or two ago. It was really funny. Attorney marketing is one of the most important things you could do. It's part of my triangle of success for having a law practice, especially immigration law practice. One is having good education, knowing what you're doing. That's what education was. Most of what we're talking about up till now, just how to do this and what's happening, all that kind of stuff. But the second part of it, of the three parts, is marketing. And I was looking at these commercials, and Vegas has a big attorney marketing situation. So I have billboards everywhere, personal injury attorneys that won awards and all this kind of stuff. But on the TV, in the hotel room, there's constantly ads from lawyers. And it was ridiculous, just mind-boggling that these attorneys spend all this money on TV advertising. There's a lot of them. And when these ads for regular kind of stuff, Nissan cars or this kind of stuff, the ad looked good on television. But as soon as attorney ads came on, the screen size for the ad became too big for the television. And this is like all the televisions there. It wasn't just the one we had in the hotel, where they write their phone number on an email like on the screen while the attorney's walking and talking and doing whatever kind of attorney ads all look the same on television. But the numbers and the email address were cut off in the commercial, so it was like 1-800-555-2, and then it was cut off the last three digits. And the email was like jqk and then the lawfirm.com or jklaw.com, my website. It was cut off the extra part. So it's like you spent all that money, it's completely worthless because your contact info was cut off. And they're running constantly, so this person should watch their ad and do that. Now, it's happened sometimes with me when I post these podcasts. I uploaded, and then when I uploaded 80% of it's there, 20% is cut off by the end of the podcast. I have to re-upload it and fix it up. That happens every once in a while. But you got to go back and listen to this stuff. It's amazing that they spend this much money on ads to television, and the ads worth this because the contact information isn't there. And so it was kind of hilarious to me, but it's just this small things. Even if you put the money into marketing, you do the video, you do all that kind of stuff, so you got to be on top of it from the beginning to the very end, because that last part where they show it on television, that's not done properly. It's horrible. Or extension of that, if you don't pick up the phone once people start calling and returning phone calls, that's a complete waste of the advertising time. Now, talking about attorney success, being education, then being marketing, the next thing that comes into is customer service, which I'm not going to go to right now. But it really brought up some important points, or came up this week, because I think it's Nolo, Martindale, that kind of thing. They did a statistical analysis or a survey, and to see what attorneys are getting paid. And you should definitely look into this. It's really interesting to see what the average income and median income for small and solo practices are in the U.S. And they saw, intellectual properties at the very top, making, I don't know, $183,000 or something like that. And immigration lawyers are at the very bottom of the list of paying attorneys. And it's really sad to see immigration attorneys who work so hard and diligently and sacrifice so much, and the clients need immigration attorneys the most. If you have catastrophic injury and you're paralyzed, and you need the money for the lawsuit to help yourself, definitely. But a lot of times it's accident cases or sexual harassment, stuff like that. It's just traumatic and inappropriate and unjust that happens to people. But immigration, you're dead in the U.S. if it doesn't work out. You're deported, separated from your family, never coming back to the U.S. You might get sent to a third country, which will torture you, kill you, imprison you. Gang members will rape you every single way possible, physically, mentally, everything. So it's catastrophic if we're not successful, and the stress on us. But it's really sad to see where the lowest paid attorneys. And I think this has a lot to do with the management of the practice. It's really tacky to talk about money. It's not really smart or appropriate to do so. But in this context, it's amazing. I have to talk about it, how much generally I would make, because I really want to help immigration lawyers overcome the issues that are stopping them from happening. We should not be as broke. If you're an immigration lawyer and you're struggling to make money, you're not going to take care of your cases well, because you're going to be worried about paying your bills. And that should be the last thing an immigration lawyer is thinking about. They should be losing sleep at night, but it should be about their clients getting the visa category they want, or state of removal, or whatever it is. Now, there's a Facebook group I'm a part of. I think it's called Cool Immigration Attorneys. And they did their own survey of like 100 people or so from the group are saying how much they make anonymously. And there's so many people making 0, 30, 60, 70 after like 14, 15 years of practice. Only a few made more than 100,000. It was really shocking to me that immigration lawyer would pretty much make peanuts. I think if you're making, after a couple of years, $50,000 as an immigration attorney, unless you're working some pro bono place, you really should stop practicing law, because you're doing something wrong. It shouldn't be that much. Now, they're saying, Martin Danilo, the average of small firm is making like, I don't know, 118,000. It's the 5th month of the year. I've already made more than that. And it's just mind-boggling that's like the whole year someone's not going to make something like that as a 10-year attorney, a 15-year attorney. That's not appropriate. You're doing something wrong, and you really need to get on top of it. You need to think about how you're handling your practice. When I see someone saying they make $60,000 a year and they have 2 paralegals, why would you need staff if you're only making $60,000 a year? That means you're not doing much, or you're not charging your clients. So then that comes an issue. Why are you not charging people? You're working your ass off. This is not if you want to do charity work, go work for a charity, or pick and choose a case that you think is worthy. But you're not doing your client a service by not making enough money to pay yourself, because you're not going to do a good job. The more you charge them, the more time you can spend and care about that client and hold their hand and follow up with them and present the case better in court or in any other adjudicator's face or location that you're doing it. So at the same time, I saw this article where about Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett, I have some stuff I don't like about what he does, but in general, him and Charlie Munger, one of the most successful investors in history, they say a lot of wise things. And so Warren Buffett has this thing where every year, businessmen pay to have lunch with them and talk with them. This year, these 2 businessmen went and talked to them, paid a bunch of money, and they had 3 takeaways that came. And it really goes down well and can help you to make more money and to function better. One is always act with integrity and do things you do with integrity. You don't want to just take on a case and not do your best job at it, or if you don't know what you're doing, take on a case and the client fake it that you have confidence. If you don't do it, refer it out or tell them and work with them and study it and do your best, but do it with integrity. There's more to it I thought about when I wrote this down, but I'll just stick with that. Secondly, you gotta love what you do, and obviously most immigration attorneys do love what they do, because the satisfaction of what we do is great. And I think although it's the lowest paid field, it's a field where the attorneys actually love their work more than any other field that there is. So that's an easy thing. But a third thing that's really cool is very important too. It says, get comfortable with saying no. As an investor, let's start with that. There's all these opportunities that pop up. You watch Shark Tank. There's all these morons that come on there trying to sell goods. Every once in a while, it'll be a good one. Most of all, they're cockamamie schemes that aren't going to go anywhere. You got to learn to say no. You can't jump on it. And you got to look at your clients the same. Whenever they come in, you're going to invest your life and time in that person, in that case. Is that investment going to be worth it? And so if someone comes in with, EB5, and you're going to charge like $3,000, $5,000, that's going to be not worth your time, because you're not going to be having enough time to $5,000 nothing for your 5 case with how much time it takes. So if you get that much low of money, you're not going to do the time and due diligence you need to cover it. So you're not going to be working integrity, because you're not going to have the time to give enough attention to that case with the complexity of an E5 case. And it goes to removal and all that kind of stuff as well. Removal takes so much time. You got to be able to get paid for it. And so if some client, you say your price and what it is, and they're not down with it, say, okay, no. Or you get a client that's fishy or crazy, and you need the money to save, and you're kind of short on bills, but you're like, okay, I'll take on this case. You got to have the integrity and the wisdom to say no to that case, so that it doesn't bog you down. Because I've been through this. That's why I'm talking about this. I've had cases where out of desperation I said yes, and the client turned out to be just a drain on every resource I have, and it took so much more time to deal with that client just because of their quirks, their personality, and the case and everything, that it sucked up other times I could do for marketing or dealing with other cases. So it was a disservice to my other clients because I couldn't pay attention to them because this one client was hogging my time because I didn't price it correctly or I just didn't say no, even though I saw the red flags. And so it's very important to do that. And going deeper in that, with regards to immigration practice, to not be making these peanuts on this. When I first branched out and made my own solo firm, I had no clients. I didn't bring anyone with me and I had no ability to get clients. I'd worked for someone for 2 years. I hadn't brought in a single client. But I decided to make the switch and go solo. And the first couple months were tough. I mean, there's pretty much no money coming out. Maybe helping one person with gnats for $800 or some peanuts, And luckily, my wife, then girlfriend, told me, you know what, I'm working. She's a lawyer as well. I'll pay the rent. We'll be good. I said, okay, thank God I have this couple months so I can hold things together until things happen. And sure enough, it did happen, but it didn't happen the right way. A family friend of ours said, my old boss, he's leaving his work. He's a very successful businessman. He wants to take all the clients and all the employees and start his new company. And he needs an employment lawyer, a business lawyer, somebody he can trust. And John, you're trustworthy and you're always honest, so he wants you to do it. I said, listen, I don't do employment law, I have no idea. But he's like, you know what, you can learn that. He just wants somebody you can trust. So I said, okay. He's like, I'll pay you $5,000 a month and just help me out this. I'm like, oh my God, I was making $4,000 as an independent contractor, which means I pay my own taxes and all this. I was making probably less than $3,000 before that a month. So to me, $5,000, I was like, oh my God, I'm paid now. This is great. So I did that 1 month, and then second month, and I was just constantly studying employment law in California and the nuances and business and doing contracts. And in the third month, I realized I'd spent so much time studying business law, I wasn't studying immigration. I didn't know all the nuances of the L1 visa. I didn't know the time I would do asylum cases, the nuances of this and country conditions and being prepared for this and that. And I told him in the third month, I said, listen, the money's good. Thank you for trusting me and putting me in this position. But I'm an immigration student. I made the decision to do that. And if I'm going to be that, I have to have integrity and learn it to the best of my ability. And then put that as my focus and put that as my brand name to market it. And when clients come in, they'll know that I'm in this game. I'm not just taking anyone that comes in just for the money. I want to just focus on being the best immigration attorney within the subfields that I practice in to be. And that's saying no. And at the time that cost me tens of thousands of dollars. But in reality, if I wouldn't have done that, it would have cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars because by developing my immigration brand and education and all the stuff I've done, these surveys where they come, they don't make any sense to me, and that's the way it should be. To say an immigration lawyer is making under $100,000 or under $150,000 a year after 5 or 6 years, after 10 years, it just shouldn't happen. So I talked about this before. I do have a program where I'm going to break down what I did to get where I am in detail. Frankly, because I get so many cases, I've had time to do it. I have everything set up in writing, what I'm going to do, all the programs, but I have the time to video and edit it and kind of stuff. But once it comes out, and my goal is to have it out in the next couple of months, I'm going to put it out there so you guys can sign up for the program and watch it. Because if you're a law student coming up and you're worried about student loans, if you're a person that's in another field trying to get interested in immigration, or you've been in immigration for a long time and it's not gaining traction, you don't know what's going on, it's really important to focus on these. And the program is about 3 things. One, it's education. If you're listening to this, you care about immigration education, because I talk about stuff you got there. Second is marketing. We'll talk about that there too. And third is client service. Just care about your client, listen to them, know how to talk to them. It's interesting. As I've said before, and thank you for everyone who reached out and congratulates me about having a baby recently. And one thing I saw when I got married and had a baby is whenever I told people I just got married, 8 out of 10 people would say, "Oh, congratulations, that's wonderful." And I didn't really expect it. I don't really care if people congratulate me that much or not. I don't. It's nice, thank you, and everything. But I don't think oh, why don't people congratulate me? It's not that I don't think anyone does. And then when I had a baby, everyone jumps, "Oh, that's so great, congratulations!" But it's so consistent that people say congratulations when you talk about marriage or new job or having a baby, that it's got to a point that whenever I say, "Oh, I just had a baby," I pause to give them time to say congratulations because I expect it because it happens so much. And 8 out of 10 times is the case. 2 out of 10 times they don't say it. They just stand there, okay, and they change the subject. And because I'm so used to hearing that, those people particularly stand out very negatively. Because first of all, they didn't say it, so I was like, oh, what? These people didn't say it, so it shocks my perception because I'm so used to hearing that. And then I look at it, and sometimes you have the sour faces. I'm like, well, why did this person say that? And it kind of looks negative at this point because everyone else does it. That looks negative in comparison. So then, bring that into attorney marketing. One thing I do is whenever people email me and say, I just got married, I want to get my green card through marriage to my spouse, in my email back, or if they call me on the phone, first thing I say, well, first of all, congratulations on getting married. I just got married 2 last year. It's a wonderful occasion. Congratulations. Now, because I've been the recipient of that, I know if I didn't say that, it's going to make me look back because that person's hearing congratulations all the time too. If this lawyer just jumps into, okay, it's going to be a consultation fee this much, this and that, they're like, oh, this guy's not a good guy. Or if they had a baby, congratulations to the baby. Is a boy or girl? Go into that stuff. This is just client service, and customer satisfaction. It goes deeper into that, but that was like a nuanced thing, especially with the baby. I hear a lot, and that's the stuff I'm going to go into. It seems trivial, but it's these small things that close deals. And you never know what a client's going to like. So the best foot you put forward to present yourself, the better. You're not going to get them all, but you don't need that many to be successful in the law game. We're lawyers. We charge a lot of money for what we do. We shouldn't be making a little money, to be frank about it. There's no reason why you should not be making good money, why you should be struggling as an attorney, even with student loans and everything like that at this point. Now, when I graduated, Loyola was charging like $30,000 a year. I think they're like $40,000 or $50,000. All these law schools are like $56,000 a year, these big law schools. So maybe those kind of cases, yeah, your debt's going to be overwhelming, especially if you travel and go live in another city. I know my wife is from Washington State. Her law student debt is much more than mine was because I stayed in Los Angeles. Then I lived with the family, and so I didn't have to pay rent and all that, and so it saved a lot of money. But there's ways to do it. It should work. It's all about how you develop yourself as a person. That's something I really want to get into in these product modules. But let's move on from that. So a couple of hassles. So what's going on with the Chicago lockbox? It drives me crazy. I've been sending stuff to like Dallas lockbox and Phoenix lockbox, and whenever I send the application or petition in, within a day or two they cash a check or the credit card system, and I have confirmation that they got it. Chicago takes 2, 3, 4 weeks sometimes. It's so frustrating because I'm like, are they going to send the file back or not? Why can't they do it faster? It's so annoying. Another thing, Real ID Act. So this is big in California too. The feds on the Real ID Act said that you have to have a driver's license that matches federal restrictions, this and that. So as of October, if you're going to enter a federal building, you need to have a driver's license. If you're not going to bring your passport with you, or I don't know, your what's that called? Century card or something like that they use at the border. If you're going to use your driver's license, it has to be Real ID Act compliant. Now, California IDs aren't until like 2 months ago or something, since January. So I scheduled a DMV appointment to get a new driver's license because frequently, as immigration attorneys, we have to enter federal buildings. So if you go with your regular driver's license, you're going to miss out on the info pass. You're going to miss out on the client appointment, or the hearing. So definitely get the Real ID Act if that's the case. Schedule it and go to the DMV to fix that so you don't have problems. And going back to kind of jumping back to the credit card system. So, I'm kind of a big fan of the credit card system because it seems that isn't that important. But the new credit card system USCIS has allows you to just print a piece of paper that has your credit card info for filing the case and just put that on the first page of the packet you mail in and it goes. The reason why I like that is because every time I add checks and stuff, I'm always worried, one, I'm going to misspell or missign or misdate something. I did it once in June of last year where I wrote like June 1st, 2007 instead of 2017, and it was for extension of the B1, B2 status. Luckily, I had mailed that in like 4 weeks before the due date and then returned the file because it said the check is not proper. And I got in like the check and the case back like 3 days before the I-94 expired. I was able to fix it and send it back in, or else that would have been crazy malpractice. So crazy. So I really like the credit card system for that because it's always the same thing. I just change the name and I send it in. But there are issues with that. So on the credit card authorization form, at G1450 or something like that, it has a place for the applicant's first name, middle name, last name. When I do business cases like an L1 or EB1C or something like that, I'm not sure how much is the business case there. So for those, I do checks still. But recently, and usually when I do cases like for I-140, I submit the I-140 first, and then I do adjustment of status once it's approved, just in case it's not I don't want to lose out on the adjustment of status I-485 fees. But in this case, client's like, no, I want to do concurrent filing. So with the EB1C with the adjustment of status package, for the I-140, I did a check. But for the adjustment of status, I did the credit card authorization for it. And the reason why I like it is not only is it, not going to get lost as one of the papers, when I scan the file before I send it in, it fits within my scanning system well and all that kind of stuff. It just makes sense. So it's easier. So I sent that in. The file gets returned. They said you can't mix and match the applications, have partially in credit card and have partially in check. Even though in my opinion, the I-140 is I-140, I-485 is I-485, they're separate applications. But since they were filed concurrently, they returned it. So be careful and don't do that. This is the second mess I had with. First, I sent last year. I sent the EB1 to premium processing with the credit card authorization form. That bounced and came back. And this time, mixed like this. Don't make these kind of mistakes. It's awful. But there's a secondary thing about using the credit card system, which are the ethics of it. I created a separate credit card account, and it was like I kind of didn't want to do this at first, to just be honest, because. With the tens of thousands or over $100,000 of filing fees a year that I'm spending, I usually, what I do is I get the clients giving the fee and put it in my IOLTA account, and then I write the check or the credit card authorization form so I can make sure the funds are there. I've seen clients' checks bounce and stuff like that. I don't want to deal with that. And I know when the case is moving forward because I see it being cashed and stuff. So I unless a client just can't or financially it's easier for them to do credit card, I tell them, I give them the opportunity, but I try to get the fees myself and then pay. But that's a big opportunity to get a bunch of credit card points and pay for travel, all this kind of stuff. But it's a conflict of interest. You can't get money from a client and pay for it that way for the sake of points, even though it's something that could happen without there being like any loss or anything to the client. Because there's an ethical situation of profiting from a client through a case other than through legal services that are direct. I got a credit card that doesn't have bonus points on it and stuff like that. And this comes really important because if that case where I sent the application for adjustment in and it bounced because I did half of it in check and half of it in credit card, the client had status before they were on L1. So it didn't affect their status. We just resubmitted. But for example, if that caused them status expire and then we have to resubmit, EB1 is 245 case, so it doesn't matter. But let's say it happened in a situation where a case like expired or something, there were some consequences for that returned case. Potentially, it looks like a malpractice or ethical violation if the client accused you of using the credit card system for the sake of points or stuff. They probably, this is a stretch, but as an ethical matter, and going back to integrity that Warren Buffett talked about, you can't do that. So it's something to be mindful of. As a protection, don't use a credit card that gets points, even though it's tempting. That wasn't probably that big a deal to spend that much time talking about it, but a couple of quick notes on other stuff before ending. There was a BIA decision unpublished that was unpublished where a guy had multiple DUIs 8 years ago. I think he had like 5 DUIs. And then he was adjusting status, and they put him in removal. They said, no, you can't adjust status and stuff like that. Married U.S. citizen, had U.S. citizen children. BIA returned in and said, you know what, balancing the equities. It was 8 years ago. He has children, good person in society. They approved equities of the person, made it okay, even though he had like 5 DUIs, to move forward with adjusting status. So these things happen, even though like some may have multiple DUIs. Look into that. BIA did help that case, so that's not happening. I don't take cases that have a lot of criminal history, so that's not something I deal with, but I thought it'd be helpful for you guys. Another thing is with the I-751 removal of conditions taking so long, it's a mess. So many people, that 1 year extension to get runs out, then they have to go to info pass to get a stamp, which is hard to get that. Well, add insult to injury, there's all sorts of glitches. There's biometrics. They're issuing biometrics with the wrong dates. They're issuing the final green card with the wrong dates on them. So it's actually asks what's going on. Definitely check the green cards that are coming in. Check all the information because there's constantly, every month it seems, 5751, there's some sort of bad news or some sort of mistake that's happening. Another really freaky thing is, and this might be anecdotal, but there's one young Canadian woman here on a student visa who was driving in Georgia with her Canadian driver's license and got pulled over by police. And she didn't have a driver's license. She has a Canadian one. And said, oh, that's against the law. You're illegal. She's like, no, look, I'm a student. They said, oh, no, we don't believe that. Took her to jail, kept her there, impounded her car. Cost $1,000, get the impound out. Eventually, they freed her and dropped charges because a student visa, she could be from Canada and be here and drive with the Canadian driver's license. Just the officer didn't have the education to know that and was belligerent. And so it's so tough. No matter how much you prep the clients and how much they're in the right, this kind of ignorance is still going to affect them. So it makes it really scary to be, especially be scary to be a person of foreign descent and on immigrant status in the U.S. And it's so sad because that's just going to cost like the best and brightest to go to Europe or go to other places instead of come to the U.S. Invest their money here, put their education to use here, invest in our colleges with the out-of-state tuition fees that they pay, all this kind of stuff. It's just so ignorant. You know, there's areas of immigration you could challenge, but the way they're handling it, the anti-immigrant people, it's ridiculous. It's self-harming them. It's just they don't even know better. One other thing, I got a case. I've been getting a lot of military spouse cases, which is wonderful. But one of them came to me, and they said they went to another attorney. Unfortunately, the attorney I knew and I mentored that attorney for, but they went there, and what happened was a immigrant spouse, you're on a student visa, and they're married to a U.S. citizen in the military, a Marine, gets shipped abroad. They're going to be there for 10 months and stuff. They want to file an I-130 adjustment. And the other attorney said, no, it's not possible. You're going to get deported. You're out of luck. Well, that's not the reality. If you're married to a U.S. citizen, Marine, for example, or anyone in the military, them not being able to come to the interview is not a problem. There's a waiver for that where the officer, if you bring the proof of deployment from the superior officer and show that, they'll just interview the adjustment applicant without the military spouse present. That's perfectly fine and that's doable. It's not a reason for there to be a problem. They've planned for this. Unfortunately, it's a situation where your spouse is called to war, and that especially nowadays. And frankly, for most of the Republic, we've always been at war, but that's going to happen. So, better be careful about getting that kind of bad advice. Now, to wrap it up, definitely San Francisco is going to be a lot of fun. New Orleans was awesome last year, so definitely come to San Francisco if it's not too late. Come out there, and I would love to meet you all. Email me if you're going to be there, so hopefully we could have a time to meet and greet and all that kind of stuff. And finally, the form filler program. So I've talked about this form system. Sorry, caseload's high and the baby doesn't sleep at night, so it's very hard to live life in the last couple of months. But the issue with this form filler system is this. Now, God bless all these people who have all these immigration software programs, because it's not easy creating a basic form filler system. And I'm not going to be taking anything away from what they're doing, because they need... I'm not going to go make a complex system like theirs. So if you're going to try to make a firm-wide system, mine's not the way to go. But there's little glitches on the forms. Like when I do the form system now, the system I have, there's parts that get locked where you can't fill in, like the naturalization part where they ask like naturalization certificate info, or the part where they ask about really basic apartment numbers for your address or residence or employment. It locks and you can't change it once you do it once in the form filler system. So we're trying to figure out how to undo that. What I'm thinking about just doing is, where they ask for like 5 years residential history, in the first box on Form I-130 or I-45 or I-130A, say see addendum, and then have everything go to a Word document addendum and just fill in there. So that way you could adjust and easier. I don't usually do that in my own forms. In the past, I fill out the first two boxes and then say see addendum and maybe go to the last page of the form or on that extra page. But it's just so much cleaner having an address history on a separate page too. I prefer to just do it like that. So that's the system I'm going to set up, and now we're just trying to figure out how to put it on there. That's one thing, and then so I-130 is ready, but now I'm like, having an I-485 with it makes more sense, because you don't save that much time having a form filler for I-130, I-130A, other than just beta testing it. Having adjustment of status, and that's going to save a lot of time. So I kind of like, should I add the adjustment status with it and then do the product at once so it looks better? And then all these little nuances pop up. But it's going to be a free system, so it should be fun, especially for starters. But I'll definitely keep posting on that. And thanks to everyone who signed up on the listserv for that. If you go to immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com or email me info@jqklaw.com, I'll add you to the list when it gets published so you could get access to it and use it. Thank you everyone for listening. I know it's a hard time. It's kind of just... not disorienting, what's the word? Disenchanting or something like that. Just kind of frustrating. I was talking to one of my colleagues who did an E2 and they're just at the embassy, they're hassling him. When they change the rules on, if we know what the rules of immigration are, and as lawyers we play the chess game of what we need to do to get it done, okay, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, sometimes if they deny it, we know why. But if it's a moving target with a law where one day this works and one day it doesn't, depending on the whim of the officer or the administration on that day, it just makes it so frustrating to do what to do. But you got to chug along and fight it. I've gotten kind of aggressive in my responses when I get bad RFEs that don't make sense, and just kind of saying do you know what you're talking about kind of thing. And I've always been hesitant on doing that, but I'm not like, we got to now, because there's so many just ridiculous RFEs that are coming out that are just, it's mind-boggling, because they're wasting my time, wasting clients' money for this kind of stuff. It's not fair to mess with people like that. I understand immigration is a benefit, but it doesn't mean you can just toy with people. We're human beings. So I know it could get really frustrating and hard, but it's going to get better. I was reading an AILA article. An attorney, I think in Oklahoma, did a great article, and he said, I wish I had his name, I could mention it, but he's like, for people who are coming of age and becoming immigration attorneys right now, as hard as it is, it's a very good time to become an immigration attorney, because you're learning the hardest as it is. I grew up in Obama's time, and there were difficulties there, but now it's like, I'm like, oh boy, this is hard. Because Obama and Matthew Culkin, which I interviewed on his Twitter account, talks about this a lot. Obama was just as bad as Trump, and it's not really more aggressive on a lot of parts when it comes to deportation and children and families and stuff like that. It just wasn't reported. His deportation numbers were through the roof when he first started. But for certain things that I worked on with transactional-based immigration, it wasn't as bad as it is right now, which is just over the top bad. But it's good experience. You know how it is. It's going to get better eventually, but then you're toughened up. You know how to fight, and you know what to do. I mean, it's gotten me, and I'm still debating it, that to get involved with doing federal litigation, it's not something it's not my nature to go and litigate and stuff. I don't have the patience for that. I like more educational kind of stuff and transactional kind of stuff. But I made the decision to learn litigation. Now I'm kind of pulling back. I'm like, I don't feel like it, but I probably have to learn it. But it's because they made it difficult that they forced me to add things in my toolbox, which is good. And on their own side, they just created more work because you're getting people frustrated and more aggressive. So it's not smart on their end either. But work with the times you have. Opportunity comes out of it. Again, if you're not making enough money, federal litigation is the way to go right now, because that's what you got to do, and that's an extra revenue source. Now, you're not just doing cases just for money as a lawyer for immigration. You obviously love it, but if you're not making enough money, that's something you could do and market yourself as doing it. Do federal litigation for immigration purposes, and you'll have a bunch of people referring you cases, people coming for you for that specialty, and you can make a decent lifestyle for yourself and pay your student loans and all that. There's so much opportunity. We're in a field where we have 7 billion potential clients. Who has that? Now, most of them are inadmissible or don't have the situation to come, but there's a potential everywhere you go in the world for having a client find you. So there's no excuse to be struggling as an immigration attorney. There might be some excuses here and there on the extremes, but in the middle of the bell curve, up to 1 or 2 even standard deviations, the market is good. There's no reason to be struggling unless you're doing something wrong with your practice management. Your overhead is too much. You have too many employees. You're charging too little for a case. You're spending too much time on stuff. You're spreading yourself thin trying to do 18 different fields of immigration and not becoming good at any of them and messing up, doing malpractice. It's just is a mind-boggling kind of stuff. Even practice insurance. Lawyers, we don't need to have practice insurance, but I get it. Well, you can negotiate that, right? When I first got practice insurance, I just LA County Bar referred somebody. It was a good guy, and he's very helpful explaining it. So I said, okay, I got it. Didn't ask a question. And then the second year in my practice, where I'm like, okay, I got to be mindful of money, I went to ask AILA's person and got their price, and it was like, oh, it was less. So I went to my old guy and said, well, AILA says this, and he's like, okay, I'll beat that by 10%. So he did that at 10%. I was like, oh, damn. So I went back to AILA, and then AILA, they did it 10%. I'm like, wow, this whole time, these people had 10 or 20% wiggle room, probably 40% if I pushed it. And that saved me probably $400. Now, 8 years of being a lawyer, or 10 years however I am, $400 means nothing to me. But back then when I started my own firm, $400 definitely was a big deal for me. And so it's something to be mindful of. There's opportunity everywhere to save money and to learn and to be better, and there's no excuse for not to do it. You got to be a master of your profession and master the three parts: education, marketing, and client and customer service. If you get those 3 together, sky's the limit. Thank you so much for listening to episode 69 of Immigration Lawyers Podcast, and being patient for this long one and my banter. But this is an important topic to talk about. This podcast is for immigration attorneys to become better at what you do. Please email me, info@jqqlaw.com. Reach out if you're a listener. If you're a new listener, I love knowing that you guys are contacting me, listening. It makes it really nice. Immigration Lawyers Toolbox is where you could sign up to get to know more about the Foreign Filler Program. Going to be an SF. And if you're listening on YouTube or iTunes, please do a thumbs up, 5 stars, leave a good review, positive stuff, please. It help the show. Thank you so much, and until next time, have a great one.